As a child, I saw firsthand the consequences of substance use disorders in the home. My grandfather was an alcoholic for over 20 years. He emotionally and physically abused my mother, and that went on for the entirety of her childhood. Unfortunately, the consequences of that did not end there. My mother, too, became an alcoholic. Um, she has been for over 20 years and still is to this day. And as a child, I would see the consequences of this and my mother falling into romantic relationships with people who were not safe, men who were cocaine dealers, gang members. She started to use other substances as well. Some of these men were physically abusive or sexually abusive to my mother and other members of our household. My sister, my mother's daughter, would fight physically with my mother at times. Things would get violent. She would suffer the consequences of relationships with other men that my mom had in their life. There was a lack of peace and safety in my mother's home. My sister would have to take care of my mom at times when my mom was too drunk to get her own food prepared for herself, to go places and do things, and my sister had to become an adult a lot sooner than she should have had to do that. This had a huge impact on her, and as a teenager and into early adulthood, she struggled with things like suicidality. She developed a substance use disorder herself. She's doing much better now. She has a family of her own, and she is ending that cycle. She's a present person. She's very kind and strong, and she is making sure that these issues aren't going to pass on to her children. But these kind of things even don't end there. My mother had multiple children. This impacted my other sister later on as well, my younger sister, and impacted me. I fell into substance use for over 5 years. I tried to deal with it multiple times. Luckily, I'm in a better place now. I've been sober for over 6 months. I have a choice to stop that cycle in my part of the family and in my future generations, and it's important to me, and so I'm going to do that. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you about today, is how we can enact change to stop family addiction from continuing into future generations, because addiction is a family disease. If you're like me, you may have had the question when you're hearing this story initially, does addiction run in the family? And the short answer is yes. Not everything is 100%, but when you have addiction in the family, especially from someone who's in a parental role, environmental factors certainly increase the risk of children developing substance use disorders. And genetics do play a factor as well. Um, our families are where we're supposed to be able to learn safety and boundaries, where we learn to socialize. They're where we get our most basic needs met, and they're also our main sources of love and nurturing. But addiction in the family isn't something that is only passed on from parents to children. Um, you know, Siblings pass on these things to each other. There's definitely a peer pressure aspect when you have a child in a household who is using substances and they have younger siblings who are looking up to them. We know that in romantic relationships, if one spouse develops a substance use disorder, the other spouse is more likely to develop one as well. And when a child develops a substance use disorder, even if their parent doesn't have one, it increases certain strains on their parents. We see things like emotional strains. Fear, anxiety, and anger are increased in the parental role when your child has a substance use disorder. It can also have an economic strain on your family when you need to invest in therapy or other substance use recovery programs for your child. And these are all factors that could lead to parents developing substance use disorders themselves as well. Addiction and substance use disorders are contagious in this way. Not like they're a virus, not in the traditional sense, but through the erosion of these different factors that hold families together, like safety and trust. And if we don't, put an actual effort in to stop that, it will pass on to future generations. And so the question becomes, how do we stop it? And to do that, we need to look at what factors have been proven by peer-reviewed research to stop this from bleeding into future generations. And so, first of all, addiction thrives in isolation. Families who reduce secrecy in their personal behaviors and addictions have much more success with beating addiction. Addiction is something that is really antithetical to community, and so the more a family is open and builds a sense of community and openness and trust, the more likely they are to be able to beat addiction, especially generationally. Family therapy and counseling have been proven in peer-reviewed research to reduce substance use in future generations when it is a route that is implemented to address these substance use disorders, and that is supported by peer-reviewed research from SAMHSA. But also we know that family involvement in treatment increases the likelihood of individuals in a family to enter substance use programs in the first place, as well as to complete them. And it also impacts their outcomes, such as length of sobriety, success rates, and different things like that. And so I want to implement kind of a call to action if you're listening to this, if you're someone who has a substance use disorder yourself, or if you know someone in your family who has a substance use disorder. Don't ignore it. Don't let it be a thing that breeds itself in isolation. Call it out. Talk to each other. Reach out and get help, and do it as a family unit, because this disease does not just impact an individual, it impacts everything it touches within a family structure. And unless you form a coalition with your loved ones to fight back together against something like this, it will bleed into your future generations. And it's really important to nip it in the bud wherever you find it, because like in my situation, if you have a parent who has a substance use disorder, it bleeds into possibly 3 or 4 children. All of a sudden it starts to be a little bit out of control, and you have a lot more that you have to deal with. And so it really needs to be addressed as soon as you know about it, right at the source. By breaking the silence on an issue like this, you could break the cycle that will potentially impact your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. So I appreciate you listening. Thank you for investing your time in me today, and I hope that you've learned something and that you feel empowered to enact change in your life and your loved ones' lives.